Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 249 of my modded Factorio playthrough. In this episode, we're finally going to flip all the switches on the bus and see how it works. Enjoy. So copper is at 0. So when we start flipping switches, it's definitely going to make something happen. We have a lot of switches to flip. So there we go. Everything is going to start. Oh, that was weird. But I think it kind of does that sometimes. Wow, look at all the green lights. It has a hiccup sometimes when you just turn it on. This is going to get nuts in a bit. Oh yeah, and they would help if they were actually connected. There they go. Kind of curious if this is actually going to cause a clog in the bus. Hey, it kind of is. Although we are injecting basically 2 belts of copper right now. So that's taking up a quarter of the bus already. So it is what it is. And the bus can handle being clogged up like this just fine. It'll just eventually get cleared up. And it looks like this did not get connected properly. Because I think that's supposed to go up there. So are all the other ones messed up? Kind of. There we go. Well, talking about clogs, that kind of looks like one. So why is it not going? I think it's going. It's just completely slammed shut right now. Because the further down you go here, the faster the belts are actually moving. Until you get to the end here and they're moving at full speed. So I think it's fine. It's just going to take some time. And of course, when we have blue belts, we can improve the efficiency of this by 50%. So that's not too much of a worry. But look at that. 3 belts of copper going out, and yet we're still increasing the amount of copper we have. So that's good, and as this level goes up, all the various copper producers are going to shut down. We're starting to build our manganese. And as this starts to clear out, we should find that the clog moves further and further back. Because it's definitely starting to move here. Yeah, that looks much different than it did before. It's kind of funny looking. It's almost mesmerizing in a way, where it's inching forward like that. But I mean, it's fine. You only have so much ore. And more than 8 full belts of ore is pretty good. And let's see if there's any clogs for the slag here. It doesn't look like it. It all seems like it's flowing. Well, this can't flow at all, so I guess it's only so good. But that's almost 3 belts of the slag there, so that's doing pretty good. So stone shouldn't be a problem. And now that the levels are starting to go up, a lot of these methods are starting to shut down. Because when the level is very low, pretty much every single method turns on. But that's designed around there being some kind of problem, not we flipped a switch. So when we flip the switch, it's all going to go crazy for a little bit. But then when all the bad methods start shutting down, the resources start to smooth out a bit. And we're just about to start getting flow in the back here again. And of course, it's still getting a belt of copper coming in. And look at this, all this running, and we've got the tiniest bit of uranium, which in itself turns into the tiniest amount of fuel, so rip. But we're making our titanium. We're making our cobalt. And we're making our gold. Very slowly. Just want to see this clog work its way back. Make sure that everything shuts off. So you see a lot of these methods are shut down now. the cupric and ferric mixtures are always going to be pretty good methods, so it's going to be quite common to see those on all the time, because they're basically at the top of most lists. But some of these are running. I think it's doing it to make copper, because we have so many more ways of making copper and iron now, that the fill level of the warehouses has gone way up. Specifically, it's gone up to 32,000, if you remember. So it's going to be normal to see them that high, and since copper isn't at 32,000 yet, it's going to keep going. And since we're actually consuming copper right now, it's taking a while. And all these other warehouses will go up, and if they fill up, well then so be it. It will create a stop signal and stop every method that is currently creating that overloaded resource. But pretty good, most of the lights are off now. Really the only ones that are still on are in the back here. And hey, look at that. That essentially the clog has made it to the back, because now this dump warehouse is starting to throw everything it has onto the bus, so that's pretty good. Wonder how we're doing with those stone items. Pretty good. Well, 88,000 slag. Well, that's kind of a problem if we're not consuming it. We're about to get a warning on that. Are we actually consuming it? No. Probably want to figure out why not. Because we really ought to be. Sulfuric acid is there. Must be some setting with these inserters that's not letting it turn on when it really should. Yeah, we're about to get a warning here. And there it is. But I kind of want to see this clear out. And it basically actually has now. Where that's cleared out. And we've got full flow everywhere again. And now that we have 2,000 titanium, the less desirable way with crotinium is shut off, so now we're just doing sapphirite. And the same has happened with cobalt, now that it's above 2,000, that it's not using gibbelite anymore. And the least desirable way of making gold, which was rubite, has shut off, because it's above 2,000. And that's pretty much that. It's going to take quite a long time, as you see, that every time a method shuts off, it creates it just that much slower. And since there's no direct method of creating it, it's going to take quite a while to see some results. But that seems to be working. And let's see, we have 33,000 copper, so I would expect copper to have shut down now. So pretty much all of these should be off. And they are. It's just all the remainder that's on the bus still has to get injected in here, so that's why we're seeing that. But otherwise, all that stuff turned off, so I think the numbers were pretty good. This is pretty much what I would expect. That once these hit 4,000, they'll shut off, but it's going to take a while to get to that point. So, in the meantime, we can go down and check to see why we are not using that slag. Because we should be crystallizing it. And also, actually, crystallizing it is something else we need to set correctly. We haven't increased the logic to take into account all of that. Oh wow, this thing's getting real close to getting full. Okay. So why aren't these going? They expect mineral sludge to be low. And it isn't. Well, it's actually unhooked, now that I think about it. So we're not consuming any of the sludge at all. So that could explain why nothing is getting used. Because it should aim to have it be below 80,000, I believe. So that mineral sludge is full, so assuming that this was connected, it would start consuming it all. So let's hook it up. As you can see, it's pumping up this storage tank. And then the logic is telling us, well, to make nothing. Because the logic hasn't been hooked up yet. Because I think we unhooked that. So we need to follow. Where did this line go? Well, the logic is all the way over here. So it would have come in on this red wire. And of course, there's nothing on the red wire. So we gotta see, where did it get unhooked? So we're following, being very careful not to cross wires with the other stuff. But it comes through here. It goes up. And there it is. Makes sense. Well, I guess we'll just keep it going then. It's going to be a little messy, but it also kind of doesn't really matter. Let's just send it along. Luckily, it's a different color wire than the other stuff, so it doesn't really matter. We'll just keep going up to here, and then when we connect to there, that should give the data. So hopefully that doesn't mess everything up. So, did it come through now? It did. And it looks like these are working to remove the individual signals. So, is there an output signal for what to create? Yes. And that signal appears to be silver, if I'm reading that correct. Let's double check that silver is the lowest thing. Well, actually, I guess that's silicon. Sometimes it's hard to tell. But, yep, look at that. It's starting to use it. It's sending it to the end one, and we could potentially crunch all these down, which is something we need to consider after we've got all this set up, is maybe using Recipe Combinator to crunch this down to take up less space, because we have more resource types we can make now. That in addition to the 4 types we have, we can also do zinc and titanium, aluminum, manganese, and chrome, which is right now the only way to get chrome. Cobalt and tungsten, and that's the only way to get tungsten, so that's valuable. And then uranium, fluorite, and thorium, and that's the only way to get thorium currently. I'm not sure if we actively need chrome for anything right now. Let's see what the chrome ingots go into. Well, they do help with higher levels of making like steel and titanium and whatnot. And that's basically where it goes. So we have more methods we need to figure out. And as a result, we would need to expand this. And I kind of already showed how it works, so I don't really want to mess with that on screen. I'd rather kind of do that off screen and make sure it works. But how are we doing on resources? Well, it's at 0. And that is pretty much completely empty. And what does stone byproducts say? Well, number's still going up, so that is not exactly what I'd want to see. So, did something get disconnected? Well, that's if it's over 40,000, and it's not, so that is a problem with how those inserters are set up. Kind of wondering if it worked just fine without that logic set, because there's other logic that's set here. Without doing too much considering here, I kind of just want to disable the circuit condition for now and just see what happens. Certainly I had a concept at some point for setting up those wires, but I'm not terribly sure it was working as intended here. Because we're definitely completely maxed out. We have a full warehouse. Well, just barely. It looks like it's going to start going down now. Well, we can kind of follow the logic to see what would happen. That this is essentially always going to run and always going to create the mineral sludge. But whether or not it gets pumped out is dependent on other factors. So it gets pumped out if mineral sludge is less than 20,000 and we have more than 10,000 sludge. So in other words, this level gets low, it'll pump it out. Or it'll pump it out if the slag level is high, which makes sense. Or it'll pump it if the slag slurry is low. But actually, I'm not sure that's really relevant, because this slag slurry is just coming from the bus. So that might have been an error on my part, that it really doesn't matter. Because this warehouse is just a buffer warehouse. It has no effect on anything. So, let's put that to the test by unhooking it for now. It'll still be there, but it won't be doing anything. And let's see how this works. Well, now, this pump is running to keep this at 40,000, like designed. And when it's above 40,000, this pumps it out, but it's probably not quite right here. So we probably want this number to be a little lower. So that one pumps it up to 40,000. I would say, let's say if it's above 35,000, this will run. So there we go. This is pumping it down to 35, and now it's alternating. Well, this one is running at full speed. That might help. So not all of these are running, but it could just be a through rate thing. It's not really going through the filter frames as fast as it needs to. Well, we can help there. I wonder if yellow belt actually isn't fast enough for all of these. No, it should be. And it could just be a lack of inserters here. Although it's basically going as fast as it needs to. Let's see, these ones on the bottom just aren't getting any slag slurry. And they seem to be connected. So it could just be a speed thing. Well, each one of these is getting a belt. So could they be faster? Almost certainly. Well, let's make a few for now. I'll start with using faster machines, and then if that doesn't work, we can start throwing modules in there. But since we basically upgraded every other machine in this setup, it also kind of makes sense that we would need to upgrade this part. And, sorry, these liquefiers do seem a little loud, so I need to mark that down as something I should revisit as far as volume is concerned. So now the inserters seem... no, they are fast enough. And still high on slag, but we're definitely working our way through it here. Okay, those are going faster. What kind of rate do we have now? 25 a second. That's pretty good, and it should be basically green here. And it seems to be. And these are still going through all of the filter frames. So I think we've maxed that out. It seems like it's doing a good job now. Meanwhile, slag slurry seems like it's holding up. Haven't really checked since we started here. Probably not really consuming many resources anymore, but it seems like all these setups are working pretty well. That it's giving a priority for crushed stone. So knowing that, we probably want to have a level that this gets to before it stops, because currently it just would max it out. And there is logic in place to control this. So I'm wondering if maybe we'll just set this to like 20,000. So the crushed stone has to be less than 20,000. There we go, something like that. Because then it will back up eventually all the way up to here. And if it does, instead of trying to put it on our stone bus here, it will send it up here to the local systems to make it directly into the liquids, which are much easier to transport. And this is now running, making lead and tin. Is that because lead and tin is the lowest thing? Well, lead is actually. Looks like they're fighting between silicon and lead, so it's probably kind of going back and forth there, but that makes sense. So what does the bus up here look like? Well, it looks pretty good. That we have 400 400 uranium just as a byproduct, and then our 6,000 gold, and then 4,000 for each of the cobalt and titanium, which was the high level as decided by just the logic for those. So that's looking great. Other things are predictably high because we just added some new resources, so it's going to take a while for those to equalize. And as always, nickel is kind of high, but I did also try to make sure we didn't get too much of it in the logic, so hopefully that will go down over time. Same with tin. And we have some manganese, so we definitely have some logic that we need to fix downstream here in order to work on manganese. But I would say right now, probably the next step is working on this giant ore crystallizer setup, making it smaller with the use of modules, and also probably our first real use of recipe combinator in order to shrink this down so it can only be one line of machines handling everything and just have our logic controlling everything. But overall, I'm pretty happy. That is essentially tier 3 ores. We still need to do the hybrid catalysts and kind of move things around, but that's after we have more science. But for now, I'm pretty pleased with how it worked. Oh, and there's one other thing we need to do, is hook up this acid here, but it's not too much work. I guess we might as well do that now, but I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. It didn't take up too much space. We were able to move everything, and it just kind of looks clean. So I would say it all turned out pretty well. And looks like stone is finally starting to balance out. So this is a source of fluorite for the acid, but 50,000 is actually the high level for the warehouse. It's not a low level. I'm not sure what a low level would actually be. Let's see, it's being stored here, and it's not being created in any other way. It's being created as a bit of a byproduct from acid gas, but that comes in pretty small quantities. The rest of it's being stored here, so we might as well continue storing it here. So basically what we need is some logic to turn on that acid production if we need it. And one interesting thing is that it actually doesn't make very much acid here. So if we select our entire setup, and it very much appears like it has all of the modules, that this whole setup only does 31. So basically a red belt. So it's 2 belts of red input and like 1 yellow belt of the catalyst to make 1 red belt of output. This is different than other combined ores, like let's do nickel here, where we have our 2 belts of input and it will create 2 belts of output. So this is a lot of work for kind of not a lot of acid, but it is what it is. And we do have somewhere to put it, so we might as well use this next line here. And it doesn't need to have a warehouse here because the warehouse is somewhere else. But let's try to have the logic in the same place as everything else. So it would be somewhere up here. And basically we need to get the acid signal up here. And kind of the question is how far away is the acid signal? And is it worth sending up here? Let's see, this might be the closest location of the acid it appears to be. So I don't know if I want to do another giant wire for this. Usually whenever a situation comes up, we're like, oh no, we have to run a big wire. Well, that is a situation to do a signal transmitter, and unfortunately, we're going to need some batteries for that. And we don't normally carry those. So let's swing in here and grab some batteries. I think we needed like 20 of them. So let's just pick the point that's furthest up, which seems right here. We'll plop the transmitter in there. Give it some power. And add the acids to that. And I don't want to run that wire up because we already have a red wire here for the ores, and we have a green wire for the inputs. So I don't want to have all that stuff mixed together. It would be really annoying. So this is definitely a convenient place to use one of these, despite how huge the dish actually is. This is a quite convenient place to do this. Actually, could probably just put it right here. There we now have the receiver and can run the wire across. And it might help, though, to have an intermediate power pole so we can actually see the signals it's giving us. That we used it before for the alien bacteria, and that's probably because we have a bunch of it here. Yep, so it's saying use this alien bacteria before you use the normal stuff. Is that thing going to pick anything up? I have to find out. I'm going to bet it will not. A lot of these were having issues. Won't, won't. But there's our assets, and now our assets are on the network. And we want to have a low level here. So how about like 10,000? So if it ever gets below 10,000, these will turn on. And strangely enough, they are on, so did I do it wrong? Oh, that must be like, is it recipe? Yep, got screwed again. It's kind of annoying how that works. I guess it's just part of how that mod works, but to be very careful when you have the recipe combinator in there that you don't select the recipes for items, that you select the normal item. But there we go. Now they're off. So if that level ever gets low, these will turn on, and it'll take them quite a while to get down there. But they will eventually get down there. And that'll be about 1 belt's worth. So we just need to take this down to wherever the closest acid location is. We are going to be using enough of this where we are going to care about throughput, so you can probably make the rest of this bread because we know it potentially could be. Because it could potentially have 30 per second. And if it ever does run, it's going to be clogging all this stuff. It feels like it's going the super long way around, though. Because it's just going down and then across again. Which I feel like is not ideal. But I think part of it is because the acid bus is kind of right here, and it's pushing it to the very beginning, so otherwise we could run a separate belt down right here, and that might be slightly less dumb. So if we did it that way, this would remain yellow, just so it's not clogging that one belt, which it seems like it would. So it would come down here and keep going, and then get merged into kind of these three belts, but really that belt on the bottom is just an extra one. It's kind of done in a really odd way because they didn't want to pick all this stuff up, so let's just do it with one storehouse here, and that should take care of that. Just a couple other things to clean up here. It's looking pretty good, but one other thing we need to concern ourselves with is any extra ores that find themselves in our inventory. Where would we put it? Well, we want to get it in here, and we have 4 new ones. So we'll grab 4 and take this spot down here, I suppose. The 4 new ones being, in no particular order, cobalt, titanium. Hey, it looks like they're actually delivering some stuff here, because I guess it had nowhere else to go. Gold, and uranium. And that'll get placed where it needs to go. Let's check our repository warehouse, where everything gets sent to die if it can't find anywhere to go. Let's see all the junk that might have found its way in there and make sure that it actually goes to where it needs to go. And it would be right here. You see we've got more pipes and things in there, but... and some other stuff. Oh, it's actually shut down. That's interesting. I'm actually kind of worried now. Were those bots just chilling somewhere with that junk? Well, usually you find out about this kind of thing when junk found its way to the wrong spot. Can't really exactly check the entire factory to make sure. Well, let's unhook that and see if robots are like, oh, finally, we found a place to put this stuff. But we got some junk in here. Go through our inventory and look for any other junk we don't need anymore. Well, inventory's looking pretty clean now. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. Getting increasingly large. But that's how it works. Is the wall doing alright against biters? Seems like it. Is power doing okay? Never really checked it when things were going nuts. But it seems to. I guess we're burning stuff. It's keeping the accumulator charge correct, so that much seems okay. So I guess the next step of our ore processing here is to upgrade our crystallizer setup with logic for the new ores, and also hopefully finding use for the recipe combinator to make this a whole heck of a lot smaller than that. But that's gonna have to wait till the next episode. Thanks for watching, and I will see you later.